Music can make us feel a whole wealth of different emotions. We most often look to it for a mood lift or for consolation, but not all music feels like a safe space, and as with all art forms, sometimes people want to make things that are downright
spooky.
Halloween season is upon us. It still is, because I say so, and today I'm going to share with you 8 of my favourite unsettling pieces of music. This lighting is a lot better. Now, there are lots of paths that I could have taken this video down. Note that I'm not merely covering music with autumnal or pagan overtones, rather stuff that I think is genuinely chilling in one way or another. Please don't go adding these to any Halloween party playlist. But equally, this isn't merely a list of disturbing pieces of music. I'm mostly focusing on eerie atmospheres, particularly in the realms of ambient and electronic music, so hopefully something different from most creepy music lists out there, and something that plays into my specific subject knowledge area. So if that piques your morbid curiosity, we shall begin. Selected Ambient Works Volume 2 is a beguiling masterpiece and dreamlike in all senses of the word. I could have chosen a host of different tracks off this album for their various flavours of eeriness, 7 for its uncanny liminal hypnotism, 16 for completely eschewing musical convention and hitting you with just these chilling, cavernous echoes like the roars of some unfathomably huge creature deep underground, or especially 4 I very nearly put here for just chilling me to my core and genuinely putting me in fight or flight mode. But number 5 is truly unsettling in a particularly interesting way. Aphex Twin was inspired by his experiences lucid dreaming while writing this album, and as someone who has also lucid dreamed a lot in the past, especially as a young child, I find the musical landscape of a piece like this uniquely evocative. You're drawn on by this distant yet incessant rhythm, like the ticking of a clock in distorted dream form, while spectral synths sigh and wail, reaching up your spine and creating the creeping sense that you're not safe here, you've wandered out too far and are struggling to find your way back. I remember having nightmares where I knew none of it was real, but had to find my own way back to the real world, and the atmosphere of this track eerily brings back that childhood fear from an overactive imagination, making for a shining example of how this is probably the most effectively unnerving ambient album of all time. Air are a band probably best known for creating warm, spacey, pillowy atmospheres on albums like Moon Safari, but in various places they've ventured out pretty far into the avant-garde, particularly on this follow-up 10,000 Hertz Legend. This track is very strange. I imagine how creepy you find it is very subjective. Sometimes I listen to it and feel more just weird than afraid, but I definitely feel that its overall effect is pretty damn unsettling in a way very specific to this idiosyncratic band. Thing is, I'm really unsure what this song is actually about, and by the looks of my research, neither are many people. There's lots of sexual and morbid imagery going on, including some guest vocalists from the band Buffalo Daughter, who sing in Japanese and then talk about a prince from the biomass and so on. It is pretty much indecipherable. But the most important thing is the atmosphere the song sets up, which is just uncanny and seriously sinister. You begin with this soft, slightly out-of-tune acoustic guitar out in the open, which sounds like it always wants to resolve but never quite gets there, looping round on this uncomfortably weightless set of chords that sound equal parts lullaby and funeral dirge. Then you get these distant, ghostly flutters reverberating into the ether and building upon this creeping sense of disquiet. Dunkel's vocals come in sounding like an emotionally vacant android, singing "I'm not afraid to die in your arms" with eerie calmness. From there, everything rises into a menacing wall of sound, with the aforementioned guest vocalists bringing a malignant regal authority, and all these distorted kinetic hits of percussion. It's creepy in a super left field, otherworldly way, and for as much as I'm baffled by it, it's kind of mesmerizing and incredible. I'm kind of cheating here, including a whole LP, but I really wanted to shout out this 4-part dark ambient epic that looks to be the only release we'll ever get from the enigmatic duo of the same name. It lulls you into an enveloping nocturnal atmosphere that first feels serene in its weightlessness, but over the course of the record's hour-long runtime, gently shifts in many different directions. There's passages of mesmerizing wide-eyed splendor, but also moments where the music's sense of peace seamlessly and insidiously transitions into moments of disquiet and dread, or pensive gloom, or void-like emptiness. My interpretation of the album based on the cover and music is that this is someone taking their own life and their soul wandering adrift in the city. It's more than a little disturbing with this idea in mind, but is probably among the most emotive, evocative ambient music I've ever heard, and definitely not to be slept on. Have a Nice Life's Death Consciousness is a shoegazy, industrial, gothic masterwork, and one of my favourite albums of all time. The whole double album is thick with darkness, and themes of depression are prevalent throughout, but Hunter here is probably its most unsettling moment in lyrics and atmosphere. For the first 6 minutes, you're drawn into the cavernous gloom with droning reverberations of guitar and cycles of jagged, distorted percussion. Dan Barrett's lyrics seem to imagine death as a hunter who the speaker is giving himself up to among swathes of animals. The prolonged dissonant harmony on the line, 1,000 bared teeth, 1,000 bowed heads, yes, they're begging you for death, is so powerfully eerie. I'm getting goosebumps talking about it. You get completely lost in this dark, sprawling soundscape before you're jolted awake as the whole thing kicks into gear in its final section. The vocals are almost drowning in the noise, the incessant hits of snare are like hollow metal being struck, and yet the whole thing is darkly beautiful. A prime example of the band's powerful command of unearthly eeriness. The deeply layered forests of ambience that Wolfgang Vogt builds with each album under the Gas moniker can be full of splendor and beauty. I doubt that any fans of ambient music would disagree that pop contains some of the most lush, gorgeous sound design in the entire genre. However, each album has a distinct tone, and he's not at all afraid to paint with a darker palette. Rausch, meaning rush, frenzy, or intoxication, is easily the most disorientating, discordant entry in his catalogue. And in particular, this fifth movement, or the third side of the vinyl, is the point where I still get seriously unnerved with each listen. Portentous synths drone and interweave as wayward orchestral samples strike uncomfortable dissonances, all underpinned by this deep, earthy thumping that, on proper bassy speakers, feels like the footsteps of some great beast just out of sight. This isn't Rausch in the euphoric sense. It's the flip side, where consciousness spirals out of control into dark visions of chaos. The Seer is such a towering achievement from experimental rock titans Swans that if I try and pick apart its 32-minute sprawl. In any particular detail, I'm gonna get way out of my depth through a video like this. It's an absolute monster of a track that I really just have to point you to so that you can experience it for yourself. A visceral, ritualistic journey whose atmosphere goes from folk horror-like to downright Lovecraftian. It's dark and creepy as hell, but awe-inspiring in its structure and execution. One of the most intense things I think I've ever experienced in the world of music. I've put this here as a sort of companion piece to the Seer, even further down the rabbit hole of ritualistic epics into full-on drone music. The whole Daughters of Darkness album feels distinctly anachronistic and ancient, like something you'd hear in the depths of a forest hundreds of years in the past. Its sound is truly unlike anything you've probably heard before, larger than life and oftentimes pretty spine-chilling. Case in point, this is probably the peak of the album's intensity, and a point where its constant foreboding boils into something more visceral and frightening, but also strangely transcendent and beautiful. To sum it up as best I can, it's like if a coven of witches slowly released your soul from your body and left you with a terrifying but extraordinary sense of the vastness of the earth and sky. Oh, did I mention it's 46 minutes long? I'll freely admit this is among the most daunting tracks on one of the most outlandish and inaccessible albums that I truly love. But if it sounds like something you could put yourself in the right frame of mind for, then boy are you in for a spooky treat. So I haven't been going through these in any particular order, but I've saved the piece of music that I think personally chills me the most to the end. And that track is... No, really. Minecraft's soundtrack is one of the greatest sources of nostalgia in the world for me, and is generally one of the warmest, fuzziest, comforting things to ever grace the ears of my generation. But C418, being such a talented composer and producer, knows how to push a wide range of emotional buttons. 13 is an in-game music disc that can be found or obtained in a few different ways and played on a jukebox, and it's fucking horrifying. Not that much is going on in the track, but I find all of the sound design and melodies to be so intensely shudder-inducingly eerie. Most prominently this warped, echoing bell-like sound that cycles round on what's almost like a nursery rhyme from hell, with long stretches of ghostly ambience and atonal effects like chimes and drops of water, all metallic, distorted and uncanny. What elevates the soundtrack to such a strong level of personal meaning is how far it goes back with me, and the fact that I've subconsciously lived with it as a background to countless happy moments from the age of about 6. But equally, a similar feeling on the other end of the spectrum places it above all the other tracks I've mentioned in terms of terror. And yes, that's a word I'm using here. I can't recall any specific memories of hearing this piece as a small child, but it's certainly nestled itself deep into my subconscious. And what I do remember vividly is a childhood fear of certain aspects of the game. Minecraft is generally a very calming experience with a beautiful atmosphere, but with a distinct lack of other human beings, the undeniable loneliness of the player in this vast terrain can lead to an underlying uneasiness that really plays upon the vivid imaginations of young children. It's no wonder that me and my friends were genuinely led to believe that we weren't truly alone in the game and that a malevolent entity stalked its dark recesses. Abnormalities and glitches would freak us out, and I do specifically remember immediately switching off the almost as horrific sounds of Disc 11 because without a firm grasp on reality, I felt deeply unsafe. All this is to say that I feel a kind of nostalgic horror listening to 13, and on top of being an incredibly eerie piece of music, it evokes old feelings from when I could be truly, thoroughly spooked by nothing but lights, sounds, and my imagination. I'd love to know if this is more of a personal thing or if anyone else has a similar experience, but all I can say is bravo to C418 for scaring the absolute crap out of me. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about some spooky things, and sorry for entirely missing the boat with the timing of my upload. I, for one, love being scared and find it really interesting talking about how different things scare different people. Link is in the description for a more extensive playlist of recommendations, but I'd absolutely love to hear what music has spooked you. But for now, thank you for watching, see you next time.